Gents, thank you very much for taking the time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. So really, like the purpose of us being here is we've travelled away from Ghent, from London. I've been on 4 trains this morning. Is that we wanted to get both Morae and Henchman together, purely talk around AI, large language models, capabilities, debunking some of the scare factors in it. And I think it's really important for us to have these kind of conversations because lots of the people we speak to are lawyers, right? And so probably a little less on the early adopter side of things when it comes to that bell curve. So how firstly, how are you guys first finding the market at the moment from your perspective?
I think, from where we're sitting, it's super exciting at the moment. I mean, we've been around for 3-4 years now. So we were around before the whole ChatGPT madness. And I think we managed to build a good, solid kind of proprietary technology to enable, lawyers that draft and negotiate complex contracts. But since GPT, it's really like the amount of requests that we get in, it's insane. And I think a lot of the, let's say, non-believers in legal tech in general really were convinced now. They were basically forced to start investigating, like, how is this going to affect our jobs or, even enrich it potentially.
How have you found it? Like, in what perspective?
I think when they've arrived to us, often with sort of in mind, okay, I want to find a new AI solution. They come to us and sort of see what are the capabilities and then sort of realize, well, the basics already can do a lot. And because we're already around for 3 years, a lot of our core technology is not pure LLM based. We have incorporated a few things in the last year, of course, but the sort of basic search functionality, going through your DMS, finding structure in the unstructured, that's really where eyes are starting to tinkle. And they're really starting to see, okay, Henchman is really a solution for us.
I always have a question that I always think is quite interesting is thinking about, obviously you guys been going for 3 years. Have you seen like a massive uplift in people interested since the publicization of ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Because it's like in the public domain now. So are they like, this is going to make a lot of sense?
Yes. Of course, like there's been a huge uptake in demo requests or like access requests, as we sometimes call it, where we've seen a lot of people like in the awareness phase. Like, a lot of people like tasked by leadership, like find out what we can do with this AI thing. And so very rapidly, there was a lot of people in those calls asking, show me your AI as a result. But I think in the last like 4 or 5 months, the market's matured significantly in terms of what they can expect of AI and what the limitations are. And I think even more, it will evolve into the spheres of, what are the use cases that we want to solve as a law firm, as a team, prior to like, really asking like, how can AI do that? I think that's what's going to happen in 2024 more of, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because how I see it is, and we talked about this in our little prep session around the people, the process, the technology, engaging those stakeholders. Are you seeing people in a good position or is there a lot of re-education? How are you guys seeing it from a engagement perspective?
It's a huge challenge, of course. I mean, adoption in legal tech. For us, it's very important to be where the lawyers are. So we live within that ecosystem. So lawyers spend a lot of time in Word and Outlook. We are right there next to them. And that's key. So the user experience, that's really how we think about it first. So we don't want to sort of look at AI and sort of, okay, what fancy new things can we build with that?
Sure.
What are problems, issues, challenges that our users are facing? And then really building a user experience with AI to help them make that happen.
I think like even 3 years ago when we started, like the 3 founders are not legal professionals. So I think that's really a strength, right? It forces us, like any good product owner, it forces you to really engage with your customers, with your prospects, understand like, what keeps them awake at night. And so what was very clear from the get-go when we thought of Henchman is that, 2 things. First of all, legal professionals are super busy, very busy. And then secondly, and I say this with the utmost respect, they're not super tech savvy. Sure. So it was very clear to us in the beginning, like building something like Henchman or any legal tech for that matter, it has to be something that plugs into their workflow or has a very short time to value. And I think that's what not so good legal tech, or at least legal tech that's struggling with adoption, is failing to do, is really play into those kind of opportunities, let's say. And that's also how we look at the role of AI. It shouldn't just be AI, because then it's not going to get adopted. It should be something that solves something, that fits into a certain flow, that feels magical somehow. That's really...
It's always a bit about magic, right?
Yeah.
It's always will be magic. I always think the best technology helps augment a process rather than changes a process. And so I've seen a lot of technology over the last 20 years, and the things that don't work are things where you are forced to go do something, you're in an environment which you're not familiar with, and it just doesn't work. And so, yes, there's like ROI is fabulous and it's going to make your life game-changing experience, but ultimately humans are creatures of habit. And so the best thing, and I think a lot of companies have learned this over the last 5 years, is how can we improve and augment an existing process? Like, we all know Word's not perfect, right? But 99.9% of all lawyers are in Word. So was that an initial thing you thought about by being an extension of Word? Did you have to fight that? Like, how were you thinking about that kind of?
You know, an iPhone and you're downloading an app, you wouldn't really pay €1,000 for it, let's say, right? So we were worried, like, is there going to be enough value for the end user? But I think, you know, the product itself grew so much, the back end became so heavy that it became so obvious. But it was something that we were contemplating, like being where they are, having a very little, let's say, overlap with their workflow. Is it going to be perceived valuable? But of course, today, you know, it's easier to say that now. It is, but yeah.
And that is, of course, Word today. It might be Copilot in the future, right? So Microsoft, they're launching very new interfaces, and that's where AI is actually very, very good at. That new interface that is more sort of chat feeling, you have more conversational. That might be a next place where Henchman will be, and we're already experimenting to be part of that ecosystem. So we're always going to be, I feel like it's a repetition, where the lawyer is, and that's a fundamental for us.
Yeah, I think a key thing we've also seen is, I think people are slowly moving away from spending money and having to see products for the money, and moving more towards outcomes. And so, for example, like how much is a license per month, but people only care about the outcome of that experience.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, over the last 20 years, 10, 15 years of that was making sure that the product warranted the cost regardless of the output.
Yeah.
So you'd spend millions of dollars on UI and be like, look how shiny, look how jazzy it is, but without any real outcome. Whereas now I think people are changing that perception.
How do you feel the market is looking at that? Like, sometimes we really feel like some prospects or even customers have really experienced some bad legal tech. And, you know, is that like some sort of old way of doing tech that they felt, or how, like, what's your experience with that?
I think there is an issue you have around, especially, I think it's tricky for you guys because I think it's quite easy for you to get pulled into classic CLM world as well, where you're not, right? People are really once hurt, twice shy, where effectively we spent a load of money on this, it hasn't worked. And so their perception is nothing will work.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't know what the process or methodology is, but sunk cost, right? At some point, you've got to accept with the old technologies that you're using, the money you're spending, you're losing. I always use the analogy of an old car I used to have, right? I used to have a VW Golf, but if the cost outweighed the value of the car, you need to stop spending money on it, right? So, because otherwise you keep on spending €800, but the car's worth 500, like you need to stop. And I think us as humans have a real issue around that stop moment because it is an acceptance of failure. And so I think now it's all about that education and the speed we can show them value in the new technology that they're using, the greater and the more comfortable they're going to feel with it. Do you guys come across a lot of opportunities where people are like, we tried this, we spent a load of money, it hasn't worked? Like, what's the general like background of your, I suppose?
I mean, yeah, sometimes, like, to use an analogy, we come across like beaten dogs in a way. Like
Sure.
that's how it feels. Like they're scared of what might have happened in the past. It feels like a trauma they've experienced, and I can understand that actually, because if you had like 2 or 1 maybe bad experiences, it might cost you your career if you have a third one or a second one. So I really understand that dynamic, but yeah.
And it's often technologies that needed so much manual input.
Sure.
To really get going, and you're sort of looking at a very long project, and that's very daunting, right? And I think LegalTech has been underserved for so long that, like now with GPT, that is all of this new legal tech that is coming up. A lot of law firms are sort of catching up and sort of leapfrogging in a lot of ways, and then it's like eye-opening the possibilities that are there, right? And that's really amazing to see.
I think technology. I always think that the dawn of cloud data centers set a level playing field for everybody, right? So before then, we used to work with, again, document management on-site, enterprise legal management, which is master management, e-billing on-site. These are multi-million-dollar investments year on year for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And so that really only services the top 5% of law firms globally, the top 5% of legal department corporate globally. And then so everyone else is underserved, right? The dawning of like AWS and Azure kind of changed that game. And so if we see in other things like workflow or master manager e-billing from a corporate perspective, you get mid-market, real good quality tools out there now for that service, a huge part of that mid-market. And I think that's the same for law firm, right? Primarily where all their investment previously has been in knowledge management, document management. Now they're looking for systems and solutions that can augment that. And is that how you guys focused on it? Because again, you tie yourselves really tightly to like an iManage, right? Was that kind of the objective one, to give them something comfortable to be associated with? How did you think about leaning on existing platforms?
Well, we live on top of we see ourselves as an intelligent layer on top of your DMS.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's very crucial that we're able to plug into that very, very easily. And so that's why we're plug and play as well. So we can get started like that. Being in the cloud has just major advantages because we can ship new updates every single week that are new functionality, new capabilities, and so on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a convenience thing, right? We really strive to be as valuable as fast as possible. Like, to give you an idea, our internal records from signing a contract to onboarding the end user is less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right. So that means plugging into the DMS, processing often 100,000s of contracts, which lead to millions of clauses and definitions that are then available to the end user within those 24 hours that they could search through. And so I think having that value requires you somehow to plug into something that already exists, something they've invested in already, and it wouldn't make sense for them to kind of migrate something onto a tool
in order to have the data, right?
Exactly. And I think it's something that works for us in a variety of levels, right? It works in terms of showing value to prospects, it shows value in pilots, and it converts really nicely in terms of long-term partnerships.
I also think that being in the cloud, sort of that connected world, the way we approach security, which is crucial in the legal world, where very high security requirements, you can really leverage the scalability of security tools out there, and being connected in that way, it really it helps us reach those security requirements very easily.
How do you guys? I was going to say, how do you guys think about speed to deployment? Right, because again, I think it's really critical. Again, when people talk about large language models, Gen AI, they think it's going to be a huge lift and it's going to be a real aggro. Like, was that one of your kind of key cornerstones of what you wanted Henchman to be? Is like speed of deployment, get people going? Like,
yeah.
How did you augment that? Because again, it's easier said than done, right?
I think it is. So I can talk about how we started off like 3 years ago, and then how we look at that with the role of AI. So when we started, no time, not too tech savvy, had to be plug and play. Like, it was the number one specification that we had as an engineering and product team. And so we made our lives a lot more difficult doing that, right? Because it would have been easier to say, well, then, the lawyer has to then fill that in. And before you know it, they have 20 things that they have to fill in.
And they're just not really...
And then, you've kind of, you've betrayed your own principle in a way that you set out in the beginning. So a part of that is like also with iManage, for instance, they have certain permissions set up and they have invested a significant amount of time and resources in doing so. So why in God's name would we build a tool where they need to do that again, right? Where they have to go, oh, damn it. So we just went about making it ourselves a lot harder, but build a technology that mirrors the permission of iManage. And so that really shortens that time to value significantly.
And now it's a role of AI. There's a very great foundation, technically, where no matter how structured your DMS is today, even if it's, let's say, a complete mess, we help bring structure. We understand what are contracts, what are not, what are clauses and definitions, the cross-references. We generate metadata, mirror metadata, the permissions, all of that. We bring structure and insights. And then with that, we're going to large language models. It's not that we're training a model. We don't believe in that just yet. The technology is not on that level yet. But we're going to leverage large language models to get other insights, to help you summarize, help you compare, help you build further upon what you have. And those have proved to be very, very useful use cases.
I think one of the focus areas for us in the 12 to 18 months, I would say one of the top 3 is contextuality, right? Using AI and large language models to understand the context that you're working in, or in Word, and then kind of matching or suggesting similar clauses and definitions from similar transactions that you or within the firm has been done, right? So really increasing that relevancy so that, the let's say the type of documents, the consistency of the type of documents that you're producing is of the highest level and of the higher standards of the firm. So that's really what we're constantly working on.
The truest definition of knowledge management.
Yeah.
Like that kind of communication, understanding standardization of kind of your best quality of your contracts and that value. Because again, we all work decentralized now anyway. So everyone's working in a silo. And I might be working on the same contract with Amazon, now you're working on the same contract with Microsoft. And so you're losing that communication and negotiation. So tools like Henchman brings that back together, right?
Exactly.
Where do you guys think this is going to go? Like, so if we're sitting down in 2 years' time, like, what's your objective?
World domination.
Obviously, standard one.
No, I think really building a product that is more addictive and more addictive because of the value that it adds. And I think the front set in which we will do that is for the end user is really contextuality, relevancy, really having that Google first page experience is what we're working towards on a daily basis. And, using the right technologies and doing so, right? AI, LLMs, whatever it might be that solves that problem or, that creates that value. And I think secondly, for the larger law firms, really kind of, I don't want to, give away too much, but build on top of what they've invested in the past already. Like they have certain playbooks and kind of knowledge banks that they've built over time. I think distribution is often a challenge there, and I think we see a great opportunity there in the future and so on.
And what I'm getting very excited about is more and more is how we can help lawyers become much more data-driven in the way they are benchmarking, the way they are advising or completing or advising clients or completing contracts. And we already do that to some degree today, but it's going to be more and more powerful. How have we done liability for this case in this particular client, and how does that benchmark with what we have right now? Those are questions that lawyers are dealing with on a daily basis, which Henchman already plays a big role in, and we're going to continue to do that.
Do you see a play, and again, you can ask this or not, around supporting more of the enterprise as well, like sales, function, procurement, compliance? Do you see that being an important
motion? I think when we started Henchman, we really believed that doing one thing very well for one specific user or use case is what we want to excel at, and do that very vertically. And so at Henchman, we're obsessed with the legal professionals that draft and negotiate complex contracts. Today, I would say we find those within law firms, but also in-house legal departments, which we serve. Like, can we serve notaries? I'm sure we can. Can we serve perhaps certain sales teams? I'm sure that we can. Can we serve auditors?
Sure.
I'm sure that we can. But until today, we've really been focused on, let's say, law firms and in-house legal departments.
And I suppose as a final message, if people wanted to get engaged in this world and get comfortable, what are kind of the key things you want them to think about when it comes to engaging in technologies like Henchman? Like, in a perfect world, before someone approaches Henchman, what would you like them to have thought about internally before engaging?
I think we're very focused on use cases. Like, we can notice in calls like that they haven't thought of what they want to solve yet. And then it's like, go back, and as soon as you know.
Well, that's the education piece, right?
Yeah.
So I think lots of people get, as we said, get really excited about the concept of tech AI and Gen AI, large language models. But again, that's part of the thing that we do, right? Is like, how do you get your house in order? In order to be in the best position to leverage this type of technology. And again, excuse my French, if they're using document management a bit crappily, right? If they haven't got a real steer around what they're trying to achieve, no matter how wonderful the technology is, they're not going to get the desired outcomes that they want. Right? And so how I always, again, I mentioned it earlier, is that classic, who are your stakeholders? Like, what is the thing you're trying to solve, right? What are the processes that you're trying to effectively replace, right? And that's a really hard thing to map. So again, because generally it's all manual now, and as we, in our workshops earlier about the discussions about how lawyers don't want to share their work product and what they're doing. So you've got to get over that, and then understanding the technology that maps that process.
I mean, I think something that we're thinking about constantly is what differentiates the augmented law firm from, let's say, the more traditional or outdated law firm, so to say. What's the difference between the early adopters, early innovators versus the laggards? And I think one of the main things that we've identified is that sharing mindset. Like, there has to be the willingness to get better from what we've all done.
Constant improvement, right?
And that sets a whole movement and a whole motion into practice where you start thinking about like more high, value added work.
I think I know what you mean. So you were thinking about, we want to move them off low value, high volume work, right? You want to move them to being a strategic partner to their business clients. Because again, how I always used to sell this type of technology and present it is, like, you didn't get into law to do contract review, right? That's not why you became a lawyer, right? You became a lawyer because you wanted to do sexy M&A deals. You wanted to be in litigation. You wanted to help huge corporations and startups on their growth path. You didn't want to be negotiating the limitation of liability with their law firm back and forth for 8 weeks. That's not what you got into it for. This is why this technology is so helpful.
Agree.
Done. Let's finish. Gents.